The moon of Valith was a cold, desolate place. Its surface was covered in jagged rocks and endless fields of gray dust that stretched as far as the eye could see. The sky above was dark, broken only by the faint glow of distant stars and the massive gas giant it orbited. This barren world had once been home to a thriving colony, a mix of humans and their insectoid allies, the Valians. But now, it was a battleground. For weeks, the Zexari had bombarded the colony with relentless attacks. The Zexari were a reptilian species known for their brutal tactics and unrelenting hunger for resources. To them, Valith wasn't just another target. It was a prize worth fighting for. Beneath its lifeless surface lay rich veins of rare minerals, materials that could power entire fleets or build weapons capable of destroying planets. And so, they came in droves, determined to take what they wanted no matter the cost. Jin Ho stood at the edge of the colony's crumbling walls, staring out into the wasteland beyond. His face was streaked with dirt, his uniform torn and patched together more times than he cared to count. Once, he had been a proud military strategist, leading armies to victory with clever plans and bold decisions. Now, he was just a man trying to keep his people alive one day longer. His hands gripped the railing tightly as he watched the horizon, waiting for the next wave of enemies to appear. Behind him, the colony buzzed with activity, or rather, chaos. People ran back and forth, carrying supplies, repairing damaged equipment, and tending to the wounded. Yun-Su, Jin Ho's younger sister, was among them. She moved quickly between tents, her hands smeared with grease and oil. As the colony's chief engineer, she had spent countless hours working on the defenses, trying to keep them operational despite the constant strain. Her hair was tied back in a messy bun, strands falling loose around her face as she worked tirelessly. She didn't stop to rest, there simply wasn't time. Nearby, Kale, an elder of the Valian species, stood silently. He was tall and thin, his exoskeleton shimmering faintly under the dim light of the colony's generators. His compound eyes scanned the area, taking in every detail. Though he rarely spoke, his presence brought a sense of calm to those around him. The Valians were peaceful creatures, not fighters by nature, but they had learned to defend themselves when the Zexari invaded. Many of them had died already, their soft bodies no match for the armored warriors of the enemy. Still, Kale remained hopeful, whispering prayers to the ancient spirits of his people whenever he thought no one was listening. "Jin Ho!" called a voice, pulling him from his thoughts. It was Yun-Su, jogging toward him with a tablet clutched in her hand. "We've got a problem," she said breathlessly. "The eastern shield is down again. If we don't fix it soon, they'll break through." Jin Ho frowned. The eastern shield was critical. It protected the colony's main water supply, one of the few things keeping everyone alive. Without it, the Zexari would cut off their lifeline within minutes. "How bad is it?" he asked. Yun-Su hesitated before answering. "Bad. The generator's fried, and I don't have enough parts to rebuild it. Even if I did, we wouldn't have the power to run it anyway." Jin Ho cursed under his breath. They were running out of everything: food, medicine, ammunition, and now this. He glanced over his shoulder at the makeshift barricades surrounding the colony. Most of them were little more than piles of scrap metal and rubble hastily assembled after previous attacks. Against the Zexari's advanced weaponry, they wouldn't hold for long. "We'll figure something out," he said finally, though he wasn't sure he believed his own words. Turning to Kale, who had approached quietly, he added, "What about your people? Can any of them help reinforce the walls?" Kale tilted his head slightly, considering the question. "My warriors will do what they can," he replied in his low, raspy voice. "But our numbers grow fewer each day. We cannot fight forever." Jin Ho nodded grimly. He knew Kale was right. The Valians were brave, but they weren't soldiers. Every battle took its toll on them, both physically and emotionally. Yet without their help, the colony wouldn't last another week. As night fell over Valith, the temperature plummeted. The colonists huddled together inside their tents, sharing whatever warmth they could find. Outside, the wind howled like a banshee, carrying with it the scent of burning metal and charred earth. Somewhere in the distance, the faint hum of Zexari. Drones echoed through the darkness, a reminder that the enemy never truly rested. Inside one of the larger tents, Jin-Ho sat with Yun-Su and a small group of survivors. A map of the colony lay spread out on the table before them, marked with red lines indicating weak points in their defenses. Everyone looked exhausted, their faces pale and drawn. Some stared blankly at the map, while others whispered prayers or muttered curses under their breath. "We need a plan," Jin-Ho said, breaking the silence. "If we sit here and wait for them to attack, we're finished." "But what can we do?" asked a young woman named Ji-Un, her voice trembling. "We're outnumbered, outgunned, and Earth hasn't sent anyone to help us." Her words hung heavy in the air. It was true. The colony hadn't heard from Earth in months. At first, they'd assumed reinforcements were on the way, delayed by the vast distances between stars. But as time passed and hope faded, many began to believe they'd been abandoned. The government back home had bigger problems to deal with, wars of its own to fight. Why waste resources on a tiny outpost on the edge of nowhere? Jin-Ho clenched his fists, forcing himself to stay calm. He couldn't afford to lose control, not now. "We can't rely on Earth," he admitted. "We have to survive on our own. That means using what we have left wisely." Yun-Su leaned forward, her expression fierce despite her fatigue. "I might be able to rig up some traps along the perimeter. Explosives, maybe even EMPs if I can scavenge enough parts. It won't stop them completely, but it'll slow them down. And I'll rally the Valians," Kyle added. "Though we are few, we will stand with you until the end." Jin-Ho felt a flicker of gratitude for their determination. These people, his people, had endured so much already. They deserved better than this bleak existence, trapped on a dying moon with no escape in sight. But giving up wasn't an option. Not yet. As the meeting broke up, Jin-Ho stepped outside to get some air. The stars above seemed impossibly distant, cold pinpricks of light in an indifferent universe. He wondered if anyone out there even knew they existed anymore. Did Earth care about the lives lost here? Or were they just statistics, numbers buried beneath reports of other battles, other tragedies? A sudden movement caught his eye. One of the sentries was signaling frantically from the top of the wall. Jin-Ho hurried over, his heart pounding. "What is it?" he demanded. The sentry pointed toward the horizon. "They're coming," he said hoarsely. "Hundreds of them." Jin-Ho squinted into the darkness. Sure enough, shapes were emerging from the shadows. Zexari troops, marching in perfect formation. Their armored bodies gleamed dully in the starlight, and the sound of their footsteps grew louder with each passing second. Behind them loomed massive war machines, their cannons aimed directly at the colony. "Sound the alarm," Jin-Ho ordered. "Get everyone to their posts." As the warning bells rang out, the colony sprang into action. Men and women rushed to man the barricades, loading weapons and preparing for the inevitable clash. Yun-Su worked furiously to activate the remaining shields, muttering to herself as sparks flew from her tools. Kale led a group of Valian warriors to the front lines, their fragile forms armed with crude spears and makeshift shields. Jin-Ho climbed to the highest point of the wall, surveying the scene below. The Zexari were close now, their ranks stretching across the barren landscape like a tidal wave of destruction. He raised his rifle, steadying his breathing as adrenaline coursed through his veins. This was it, the moment they'd been dreading for weeks. There was no turning back now. The first shots rang out, shattering the stillness of the night. The battle had begun. The battle raged on through the long, freezing night. Explosions lit up the dark sky, casting eerie shadows across the jagged landscape of Valith. The air was thick with smoke and the acrid smell of burning metal. Shouts and screams echoed as humans and Valians fought side by side, desperately trying to hold back the Zexari forces that seemed endless. Jin-Ho crouched behind a crumbling barricade, reloading his rifle with trembling hands. His ears rang from the constant barrage of gunfire and explosions, but he forced himself to focus. Every shot counted now. He glanced over at Yun-Su, who was nearby, frantically working on one of the damaged shield generators. Her face was streaked with soot, her fingers bleeding from handling sharp pieces of machinery without gloves. Despite everything, she refused to give up. "Yun-Su!" Jin-Ho shouted over the chaos. "How much longer?" She didn't look up, her voice strained as she replied, "I don't know, just keep them off me." He nodded grimly and turned back to the fight. The Zexari were pushing harder than ever, their armored warriors advancing with terrifying precision. Their weapons tore through the colony's defenses like paper, leaving nothing but destruction in their wake. For every enemy soldier they managed to take down, two more seemed to take their place. Kyle stood beside Jin-Ho, wielding a spear made from salvaged scrap metal. Though his body was frail compared to the heavily armored Zexari, his movements were surprisingly quick and deliberate. He stabbed and slashed with surprising skill, driving back anyone who dared approach too closely. Blood, both his own and that of the enemy, stained his exoskeleton, but he showed no signs of slowing down. "We cannot hold them forever," Kale said between breaths, his raspy voice barely audible over the din of battle. "We need something else." Jin-Ho clenched his jaw. He knew Kale was right. They were running out of time and options. Even if they somehow managed to repel this attack, the Zexari would regroup and return stronger. Sooner or later, the colony would fall. But then, something unexpected happened. As dawn began to break over the horizon, the intensity of the Zexari assault suddenly lessened. Their advance slowed, almost as if they were waiting for something, or someone, to arrive. Jin-Ho frowned, scanning the battlefield for any sign of what might have caused the change. That's when he noticed it, a faint hum growing louder in the distance. "What is that?" Ji-Eun asked nervously, clutching her weapon tightly. Before anyone could answer, a massive shadow appeared on the horizon. At first, it looked like another Zexari war machine, but as it drew closer, its true form became clear. It wasn't an enemy. It was a human ship. No, not just a ship, a warship. Its sleek hull gleamed under the rising sun, and its engines roared like thunder as it descended toward the battlefield. For a moment, everyone froze. Humans, Valians, and Zexari, alike, all staring in disbelief at the sight before them. Then, without warning, the warship unleashed a barrage of energy blasts that tore through the Zexari ranks with devastating accuracy. Dozens of enemy soldiers were obliterated in an instant, their bodies reduced to ash. The remaining Zexari scrambled to retreat, abandoning their siege as quickly as they had launched it. The colonists erupted into cheers, tears streaming down their faces as relief washed over them. Some fell to their knees, overwhelmed by the sudden turn of events. Others hugged each other tightly, laughing and crying all at once. After weeks of despair, hope had finally arrived, in the form of humanity's finest. Jin-Ho lowered his rifle, his heart pounding with a mix of awe and disbelief. The warship hovered above the colony, its presence commanding and unyielding. On its side, bold letters spelled out its name, USS Invincible. He felt a surge of pride swell within him, followed by a pang of guilt. How many times had he doubted? Earth? How often had he convinced himself that help would never come? As the dust settled, a smaller craft detached from the warship and descended toward the ground. It landed gently near the center of the colony, and moments later, a group of humans stepped out. Leading them was a woman dressed in a pristine military uniform, her posture rigid and authoritative. Her sharp eyes scanned the scene, taking in the devastation around her. This was Commander Hai-Ri, captain of the USS Invincible. Jin-Ho approached, cautiously, still gripping his rifle loosely in his hands. "Commander," he said, his voice hoarse from shouting during the battle. We didn't think anyone was coming." Hai-Ri raised an eyebrow, her expression unreadable. "You thought wrong?" she replied curtly. "Where's your leader?" Jin-Ho hesitated for a split second before stepping forward. "That's me." Hai-Ri studied him for a moment, her gaze piercing. "You've done well to hold out this long," she said finally. "But you're not out of danger yet. The Zexari won't stay away for long." Jin-Ho nodded, feeling a strange mixture of gratitude and resentment. On one hand, these people had saved them from certain death. On the other, where had they been all this time? Why had it taken so long for Earth to respond? Behind him, Yunsu joined the conversation, wiping grease-stained hands on her pants. "Thank you," she said earnestly, her voice cracking slightly. "We weren't sure anyone even knew we were still alive." Hai-Ri softened slightly at the sincerity in Yunsu's tone. "Your distress signal reached us weeks ago," she explained. But we were engaged in our own conflict against the Krathians. Diverting resources here wasn't easy. The Krathians? Jinho repeated, frowning. He'd heard rumors about Earth's ongoing war with the insectoid invaders, but he hadn't realized how dire the situation was. Yes, Hayri confirmed. Earth has been fighting on multiple fronts. We couldn't afford to send reinforcements. Until now. When your signal came through, we acted as quickly as possible. Yunsu exchanged a glance with Jinho. She wanted to be angry, wanted to demand answers, but she couldn't deny the truth in Hayri's words. Earth had its own problems, just as they did here. Survival was a struggle everywhere. While the commanders talked, Lieutenant Tae Min, the weapons officer aboard the Invincible, began coordinating efforts to secure the area. Alongside him were several engineers who immediately set to work repairing the colony's damaged infrastructure. One of them approached Yun-Su, introducing himself as Park Jun. Together, they inspected the remnants of the shield generators, discussing ways to restore power to the colony's defenses. Meanwhile, Kael approached Hayri, bowing slightly in respect. Your arrival is unexpected, he said carefully. But welcome. Hayri nodded, though she seemed uneasy interacting with the Valian elder. Your people fought bravely, she acknowledged. We owe them our thanks. Kael tilted, his head considering her words. Bravery alone will not win this war, he replied. But unity may. Hayri didn't respond, instead turning her attention back to Jinho. We'll remain here temporarily to ensure the Zexari don't return, she informed him. After that, we'll need to discuss next steps. Jinho nodded, feeling a weight lift from his shoulders. For the first time in weeks, he allowed himself to feel a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, they really did have a chance to survive. After all. As the day wore on, the mood in the colony shifted dramatically. People who had been on the verge of giving up now worked with renewed energy, spurred on by the knowledge that help had finally arrived. Children emerged from hiding places, their laughter ringing out like music. Even the Valians, usually so quiet and reserved, joined in the celebrations, sharing stories and songs with their human allies. But amidst the joy, there was also tension. Not everyone trusted the newcomers. Some whispered that Earth had only sent help because Valith's resources were valuable. Others worried that once the Invincible left, they'd be abandoned again. These doubts lingered like shadows, threatening to undermine the fragile sense of unity that had begun to form. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Jinho found himself sitting alone atop the colony's wall. The warship loomed. Overhead, its lights casting a soft glow across the barren landscape. He stared at it, wondering what the future held. Would Earth truly stand by them this time? Or would they be left to fend for themselves once more? A soft voice interrupted his thoughts. You look troubled. He turned to see Yun-Su standing beside him, her arms crossed against the cold. She offered him a small smile, though her eyes betrayed her exhaustion. I'm fine, he lied. Just thinking. About what? Everything, he admitted. What happens next? Whether we can trust them. Whether we'll make it through this. Yun-Su sat down beside him, letting out a heavy sigh. I don't know, she said honestly. But for now, we're alive. And that's something, isn't it? Jinho nodded slowly, allowing himself a rare moment of peace. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. As survivors, as fighters, and as family. The arrival of the USS Invincible changed everything. For days, the colony buzzed with activity as humans and Valians worked alongside the ship's crew to repair what had been broken and fortify what remained. The warship's engineers brought advanced tools and materials that made tasks possible which had seemed hopeless just days before. Crumbling walls were reinforced, damaged generators were rebuilt, and new weapons systems were installed to replace those lost in battle. It was a flurry of motion, noise, and hope, a stark contrast to the despair that had gripped the colony only a short time ago. Commander Hayri moved through the camp with purpose, her sharp eyes taking in every detail. She didn't speak much, but when she did, people listened. Her presence commanded respect, even from those who still harbored doubts about Earth's intentions. Jin-Ho watched her carefully, trying to gauge whether she could truly be trusted. He admired her leadership skills, but couldn't shake the lingering suspicion that Earth's help came too late, and for reasons beyond simple altruism. Yun-Su, on the other hand, found herself drawn to Lieutenant Tae-min, the ship's weapons officer. Together, they pored over blueprints and schematics, brainstorming ways to improve the colony's defenses. Tae-min was younger than Hai-Ri, with an easygoing demeanor that put Yun-Su at ease. Unlike many of the others aboard the Invincible, he seemed genuinely interested in helping, not just because it was his duty, but because he cared. "You've done amazing work with what you had," Tae-min said one afternoon as they inspected a newly repaired shield generator. "If we can integrate some of our tech, this thing will hold up against anything." Yun-Su smiled faintly, though her mind was elsewhere. "It's not just about holding up," she replied. "We need to make sure we're ready if they come. Back. Really ready." "They'll come back," Tae-min agreed grimly. "But next time, we'll be waiting." Despite the progress being made, tensions simmered beneath the surface. Many colonists felt uneasy around the newcomers, unsure how to reconcile their gratitude with lingering feelings of abandonment. Some openly questioned why Earth hadn't sent help sooner. Others whispered that the Invincible wouldn't stay long, that once the repairs were done, they'd leave again, leaving the colony vulnerable. Kale, the Valian elder, tried to mediate these fears during nightly gatherings. He spoke softly, his raspy voice carrying wisdom earned through centuries of life. "The past cannot be changed," he reminded them, "but the future is ours to shape. Let us focus on what we have now, the chance to rebuild, to grow stronger together." His words resonated with some, but not all. Ji-un, the young woman who had earlier expressed doubt about Earth's loyalty, remained skeptical. "What happens when they leave?" she asked during one such meeting. "Will they send more ships, or will we go back to fighting alone?" No one had an answer. The uncertainty hung heavy in the air, a reminder that while the immediate danger had passed, the larger threat remained. As the days turned into weeks, Commander Hai-Ri called a meeting with Jin-Ho and a small group of leaders from both the human and Valian communities. They gathered inside a tent near the center of the colony, its interior lit by flickering lanterns. Maps and diagrams covered the tables, showing plans for reinforcing the colony's defenses and preparing for potential future attacks. "We can't stay here indefinitely," Hai-Ri began without preamble. "Earth needs the Invincible elsewhere. But before we leave, we'll ensure you're equipped to defend yourselves." Jin-Ho nodded, though his expression remained guarded. "And what happens after you're gone? Will Earth send reinforcements? Supplies?" Hai-Ri hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "Earth is stretched thin right now. We're fighting wars on multiple fronts. Resources are limited, but I promise you this. We won't forget about Valith, not after what you've endured." Her tone was firm, but there was something in her eyes that suggested she understood their frustration. She wasn't just delivering orders. She was acknowledging their pain. Yun-Su spoke up then, her voice steady despite the weight of the conversation. "We don't expect miracles, just consistency. If Earth wants us to keep holding this place, we need to know we won't be abandoned. Again." Hai-Ri met her gaze, nodding slowly. "I hear you, and I'll do everything in my power to make sure that doesn't happen." After the meeting, Jin-Ho walked with Kale back to the edge of the colony. The two men stood side by side, looking out over the barren landscape. The scars of battle were everywhere. Burnt-out vehicles, craters left by explosions, and remnants of barricades that had once stood tall. Yet, amidst the destruction, signs of renewal were beginning to emerge. Workers moved tirelessly, rebuilding what had been lost. Children played nearby, their laughter echoing across the empty plains. "What do you think?" Jin-Ho asked finally, his voice low. "Can we trust them?" Kale tilted his head thoughtfully. "Trust is earned, not given freely. But I believe they mean well, for now. Whether their promises hold true remains to be seen." Jin-Ho sighed, rubbing a hand over his face. "I want to believe them, but part of me keeps waiting for the other shoe to drop." "Fear is natural," Kale replied, "but it must not rule your decisions. Look around you, Jin-Ho. Your people are alive because of choices you made. choices rooted in courage and hope. Do not let doubt steal that from you. Jin-Ho didn't respond immediately. Instead, he gazed at the horizon, where the Invincible loomed large against the stars. Its presence was both comforting and intimidating, a symbol of salvation, but also a reminder of how dependent they were on forces beyond their control. Meanwhile, Yun-Su continued working closely with Tai-Min, their partnership growing stronger with each passing day. They spent hours discussing strategies, sharing ideas, and solving problems together. Slowly, Yun-Su began to open up, revealing pieces of her past that she rarely talked about. She told him about her childhood on Earth, about joining the scientific mission to Valith with her brother, and about the guilt she carried for failing to send a distress signal sooner. Tai-Min listened intently, offering words of encouragement when needed. "You can't blame yourself," he said gently one evening as they sat outside the engineering tent, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. "You did everything you could with what you had. That's all anyone can ask of you." "I know," Yun-Su admitted, "but sometimes knowing isn't enough." Tai-Min smiled faintly. "Then maybe it's time to forgive yourself. You've got a second chance now. Use it." Her lips curved into a hesitant smile, and for the first time in months, she felt a flicker of peace. Maybe forgiveness was possible, not just for herself, but for everyone. By the end of the third week, the colony was transformed. New walls stood tall and sturdy, reinforced with materials brought by the Invincible. Shield generators hummed steadily, creating an invisible barrier that protected the settlement from harm. Weapons platforms bristled with firepower, ready to repel any attack. The atmosphere was different, too. Lighter, filled with cautious optimism rather than despair. On the final night before the Invincible was scheduled to depart, the colonists held a celebration. Fires burned brightly, casting warm light across the gathering. Music played softly, blending human melodies with the haunting tones of Valian chants. People danced, laughed, and shared stories, savoring the moment of respite. Commander Hai-Ri joined Jin-Ho near the edge of the crowd, her usual stoic demeanor softened slightly by the festivities. "You've done good work here," she said, gesturing toward the bustling scene. "Your people have heart." Jin-Ho nodded, though his expression remained serious. "Thank you, but remember your promise. Don't let us down again." "I won't," Hai-Ri replied firmly. "Valith matters, to Earth and to me." As the night wore on, the mood grew bittersweet. The colonists knew the Invincible would soon leave, taking with it the security it provided. Yet, they also knew they were stronger now than they had been before. Together, they had faced the abyss and survived. And though challenges lay ahead, they faced them with renewed determination. When dawn broke the next morning, the Invincible roared to life, its engines lighting up the sky. As it ascended into the heavens, the colonists watched silently, their hearts full of mixed emotions. Hope, fear, gratitude, and resolve, all intertwined, shaping the path forward. They were no longer alone, and that knowledge gave them strength. The departure of the USS Invincible left a void in the colony, both physically and emotionally. The warship's massive engines had roared into the sky, leaving behind a trail of light that faded into the darkness of space. For a moment, the colonists stood in silence, their eyes fixed on the spot where it had disappeared. The sense of loss was palpable, even as they reminded themselves of the upgrades and reinforcements the ship had provided. Now, the real test began. With the Invincible gone, the responsibility of defending Valith fell squarely on the shoulders of Jin-Ho, Yun-Su, Kale, and the rest of the survivors. They had been given tools and weapons, but could they truly stand on their own? The question lingered in everyone's minds, unspoken yet ever present. In the days following the warship's departure, the colony settled into a new rhythm. Gone were the frantic repairs and constant battles. Instead, there was a steady hum of activity focused on rebuilding. Walls were fortified, generators were tested, and supply caches were organized. Everyone had a role to play, from the youngest children gathering scraps to the oldest Valians offering guidance based on centuries of wisdom. Jin-ho spent most of his time overseeing these efforts, ensuring that every task was completed efficiently. His leadership style hadn't changed. He was still firm and decisive, but there was a softer edge to him now. He made an effort to listen more, to acknowledge the fears and concerns of those around him. It wasn't easy. Many still doubted whether Earth would keep its promises, and some openly questioned if Jin-ho himself was too trusting of Commander Hae-Ri's assurances. One evening, as he walked through the settlement, he overheard a heated argument between two colonists. One, a burly man named Min Jae, was waving his arms angrily. "What happens when the Zexari return? Do you think Earth will send another ship, or will we be left to die again?" The other, a wiry woman named Su Yeon, shot back. "We survived before they came, didn't we? We can do it again," Min Jae scoffed. "Barely! And only because the Invincibles showed up. Without them, we'd all be dead." Jin-ho stepped forward, his voice cutting through the tension. "Enough," he said firmly. "Arguing won't change what happened. What matters is what we do next. Yes, Earth left us once, but blaming them, or each other, won't help us survive. We have to focus on what we can control." His words silenced the crowd that had gathered. Some nodded in agreement, while others looked away, their expressions unreadable. Jin-ho knew he hadn't convinced everyone, but at least he'd stopped the argument from escalating further. These divisions were dangerous. They couldn't afford to let distrust tear them apart. Yun-soo, meanwhile, threw herself into her work with renewed determination. She and Lieutenant Tae-min had spent countless hours together before the Invincible departed, finalizing plans for the colony's upgraded defenses. Now she worked tirelessly to implement those plans, often staying up late into the night to ensure everything functioned properly. Her hands were raw from handling tools and wires, but she refused to slow down. Park Jun, one of the engineers who had stayed behind temporarily to assist with the transition, noticed her exhaustion during one of their joint inspections. "You need to rest," he said gently. "You're no good to anyone if you collapse." Yun-soo shook her head, tightening a bolt on a shield generator panel. "I'll rest when this is done," she replied curtly. "Right now, there's too much to do." Park Jun sighed, but didn't press the issue. Instead, he handed her a canteen of water. "At least drink something. You've been running yourself ragged." She accepted it reluctantly, taking a small sip before returning to her task. Though she appreciated Park Jun's concern, she couldn't shake the feeling that time was slipping away. Every second wasted felt like an opportunity lost, a chance for the Zexari to regroup and strike again. Despite her fatigue, Yun-soo found solace in the camaraderie that had developed among the engineers. Park Jun and the others brought expertise and fresh perspectives that complemented her own skills. Together, they tackled problems that would have seemed insurmountable just weeks earlier. Slowly, trust began to grow, not just in the technology they were building, but in each other. Kale played a crucial role in bridging the gap between humans and Valians. As the elder of the insectoid species, his presence carried weight, especially among the younger members of his community. He held nightly gatherings where he shared stories of resilience and unity, reminding everyone of the strength they possessed when they worked together. One evening, as the stars twinkled overhead, Kyle addressed a mixed group of humans and Valians seated around a crackling fire. "Long ago," he began, his raspy voice carrying across the clearing, "my ancestors faced a great darkness. A predator unlike any they had seen before descended upon their nests, destroying everything in its path. Many thought it was the end. But instead of retreating, they banded together. They built traps, devised strategies, and fought not just for survival, but for hope." He paused, letting his words sink in. "That same spirit lives within you now. You have endured hardship beyond measure. Yet here you are, standing tall. Do not let fear or doubt cloud your vision. Look around you. See the faces of those beside you. This is your strength. Together, you can overcome anything." The audience listened intently, moved by Kyle's words. Even Jin-ho, who rarely attended these gatherings, felt a lump form in his throat. He realized how much Kyle's wisdom had shaped their journey, and how vital it was to continue fostering unity between the two species. Despite these moments of progress, tensions occasionally flared. Ji-yoon, whose skepticism about Earth's intentions had grown stronger since the Invincible's departure, became increasingly vocal in her criticism. During a meeting to discuss resource allocation, she stood up abruptly, her face flushed with anger. "Why are we wasting so much on weapons?" she demanded. "If Earth cared about us, they would send food and medicine instead of expecting us to fight their wars." Her outburst sparked murmurs of agreement from some, while others exchanged uneasy glances. Jin-Ho stepped forward, his tone measured, but firm. "Weapons aren't just for fighting," he explained. "They're for protection, for making sure none of us have to live in fear again. Yes, supplies are important, but without security, everything else falls apart." Ji-Eun crossed her arms, unconvinced. "And what happens when the Zexari come back? Will our shiny new guns stop them, or will we end up right back where we started?" Before Jin-Ho could respond, Yun-Su interjected. "We're not starting from scratch anymore," she said, her voice calm but resolute. "We've got better defenses, better technology, and better training. If they come back, we'll be ready." Her confidence surprised even herself. Over the past few weeks, she had begun to see the colony not as a fragile outpost clinging to survival, but as a resilient community capable of standing on its own. It was a shift in perspective that gave her, and many others, hope. As the weeks turned into months, life in the colony stabilized. The scars of battle remained visible, but so did the signs of renewal. Gardens sprouted in patches of fertile soil, tended by both humans and Valians. Children played freely under the watchful eyes of their elders. Laughter and conversation filled the air once more. Yet, beneath the surface, vigilance never wavered. Patrols scoured the perimeter daily, scanning for any sign of the Zexari. Communication arrays were tested regularly, ensuring the colony could send a distress signal if needed. Everyone understood that peace was fragile and that the enemy could return at any moment. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Jin-Ho climbed to the top of the colony's wall. The view stretched endlessly before him, a barren expanse, dotted with jagged rocks and swirling dust. Despite its desolation, he found comfort in the sight. This was home now, a place worth protecting, no matter the cost. Behind him, Yun-Su approached, carrying 2 cups of steaming tea. She handed one to him, sitting down beside him with a tired smile. "It's getting easier," she said softly. "Not perfect, but better." Jin-Ho nodded, sipping the warm liquid. "Yeah, better." For a long moment they sat in silence, watching the stars emerge one by one. The galaxy stretched out before them, vast and unknowable. Somewhere out there, the Invincible continued its mission, carrying humanity's hopes and fears across the cosmos. Here on Valith, however, the future belonged to those who remained, to the survivors who refused to give up. And for the first time in a long time, Jin-Ho allowed himself to believe they might actually make it. The colony on Valith had changed. What was once a fragile outpost clinging to survival had transformed into something stronger, more united. The scars of battle still marked the land, burnt-out vehicles, craters from explosions, and remnants of barricades that had been torn apart, but they were no longer symbols of despair. Instead, they served as reminders of resilience, of how far the colonists had come since the darkest days of the siege. Jin-Ho stood at the edge of the settlement, gazing out over the barren landscape. The horizon stretched endlessly before him, empty and quiet, for now. He knew better than to trust the silence. The Zexari hadn't returned yet, but it was only a matter of time. Their hunger for resources wouldn't allow them to abandon Valith forever. When they came back, they would bring an even larger force, determined to crush any resistance. But Jin-Ho wasn't afraid anymore, not in the way he used to be. Fear had been replaced by resolve, a steely determination to protect what he and his people had built. They had survived betrayal, abandonment, and war. Now they were ready to fight, not just to survive, but to thrive. Yun-Su worked tirelessly, alongside Park Jun, finalizing upgrades to the colony's defenses. Together, they had turned the settlement into a fortress. Shield generators hummed steadily, creating an invisible barrier that could withstand even the most powerful attacks. Automated turrets lined the walls, programmed to target anything that moved without authorization. Underground bunkers housed food, medical supplies, and ammunition, ensuring the colonists could endure prolonged sieges if necessary. Yet Yun-Su couldn't shake the feeling that their preparations weren't enough. She spent hours poring over schematics, searching for weaknesses in their systems. Every night she dreamed of the Zexari returning, their armored warriors storming the colony with overwhelming force. In her dreams, she always woke up moments before the walls collapsed. One evening, as she sat in the engineering tent surrounded by blueprints and tools, Park Jun joined her. He carried 2 plates of food and set one down in front of her. "You haven't eaten all day," he said gently. "You need to take care of yourself." Yun-Su glanced at him, then at the plate of stew. "I don't have time," she muttered, turning back to her work. "There's too much to do." Park Jun sighed, pulling up a chair beside her. "Yun-Su, you're doing everything you can. No one expects perfection. Just try to breathe, okay?" She hesitated, her hands hovering over a circuit board. For a moment, she considered arguing, but exhaustion won out. She picked up the spoon and took a small bite, the warmth spreading through her body. "Thanks," she said quietly. "You're welcome," Park Jun replied with a faint smile. "And hey, if it makes you feel better, I think we've done pretty well. If the Zexari show up tomorrow, we'll be ready." Yun-Su nodded, though. Doubt lingered in her mind. She wanted to believe him, but part of her wondered if readiness truly mattered when facing such a relentless enemy. Kale played a critical role in maintaining morale within the colony. His nightly gatherings continued, drawing both humans and Valians together under the stars. He spoke of ancient prophecies, of trials that tested the spirit and forged bonds unbreakable by time or hardship. His words resonated deeply, offering comfort to those who feared the future. One night, as the fire crackled softly, Kyle addressed the crowd with a rare intensity. "The great roaring light has shown us the way," he said, his raspy voice carrying across the clearing. "It came not to save us, but to remind us of our own strength. We are the guardians of this place, the keepers of its heart, and so, long as we stand united, no darkness will prevail." His speech was met with murmurs of agreement and applause. Even Jin Ho, who rarely attended these meetings, found himself nodding along. Kale's faith in their ability to persevere was infectious, reigniting hope in those who had begun to doubt. Despite the progress made, tensions occasionally flared. Ji-eun remained a vocal critic of Earth's involvement, or lack thereof, in the colony's survival. During a meeting to discuss patrol schedules, she voiced her frustrations openly. "We're supposed to rely on ourselves now, aren't we?" she asked bitterly. "So why does every plan revolve around waiting for Earth to send reinforcements? What happens if they never come?" Her words struck a nerve. Some colonists shifted uncomfortably, while others exchanged worried glances. Jin-Ho stepped forward, his expression calm but firm. "Earth isn't perfect," he admitted. "They made mistakes. But blaming them won't help us win this fight. Right now we focus on what we can control. That means being prepared for whatever comes next." Ji-eun crossed her arms unconvinced. "Prepared doesn't mean dependent," she shot back. "We should act like we're on our own, because maybe we are." Before Jin-Ho could respond, Yun-Su interjected. "We are acting like we're on our own," she said firmly. "But that doesn't mean we ignore the possibility of help. If Earth sends another ship, we'll welcome it. If not, we'll handle it. Either way, we're not giving up." Her confidence silenced the room. Ji-eun opened her mouth to argue, but thought better of it, retreating to her seat with a scowl. Though disagreements persisted, moments like these reinforced the colony's unity. They might not always agree, but they shared a common goal: survival. As weeks turned into months, intelligence reports began trickling in from nearby star systems. Scouts sent by Commander Hae-ri had intercepted communications, suggesting that the Zexari were planning a massive offensive, one that could threaten not just Valith, but Earth itself. The news sent shockwaves through the colony, reigniting fears of an impending attack. Jin-Ho called an emergency meeting to address the threat. Standing before a group of leaders, he laid out the situation clearly. The Zexari aren't coming just for us, he explained. They're coming for Earth, and if they succeed, none of us will be safe. The implications were sobering. If the Zexari reached Earth, humanity's homeworld would face devastation on an unimaginable scale. The colony's survival depended not only on defending Valith, but also on warning Earth and buying time for reinforcements to arrive. We need to fortify everything, Jinho continued. Double patrols, triple-check the shields, and make sure everyone knows their role. This is it. The moment we've been preparing for. The leaders nodded grimly, understanding the gravity of the situation. They dispersed quickly, relaying orders and organizing efforts to strengthen the colony's defenses. Everyone worked with renewed urgency, knowing that failure wasn't an option. On the eve of what many believed would be the final battle, the colony gathered for one last celebration. Fires burned brightly, casting warm light across the gathering. Music played softly, blending human melodies with the haunting tones of Valian chants. People danced, laughed, and shared stories, savoring the moment of respite before the storm. Commander Hyree's voice echoed in Jinho's mind as he watched the festivities. Valith matters, to Earth and to me. Her promise had stayed with him, a reminder that they weren't alone in this fight. Whatever happened next, they would face it together, as survivors, as fighters, and as family. As the night wore on, Jinho climbed to the top of the wall, where Yunsu and Kale waited. Together, they looked out over the barren landscape, the stars twinkling above like distant lanterns. The galaxy stretched out before them, vast and unknowable. They're coming, Jinho said finally, breaking the silence. But we're ready, Yunsu nodded, her eyes reflecting the firelight. Ready or not, we'll hold them off. Kyle tilted his head, his compound eyes gleaming faintly. The great roaring light will guide us, he murmured, and so will our courage. For a long moment they stood in silence, united by a shared purpose. The Zexari would return, bringing destruction and chaos in their wake. But when they did, they would find a colony transformed, not just by weapons and shields, but by the unyielding spirit of its people, and in that spirit lay their greatest strength.